Welcome to the Conshy Coaching Podcast, where we take the concepts of mindset and energy leadership coaching and make them real so that you can get out of your own way, beat the burnout, and create a life and career that you love. I'm your host, Jen Massey. Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Conshy Coaching Podcast. Today, I have Rob Tull joining me. Rob and I met at our second in-person coach training weekend at IPEC and became fast friends. I love Rob because he has this uncanny ability to attract chaos into his life, but takes it in stride and always has the best stories to tell. I'm usually left with my jaw on the table or laughing to the point of crying. As a certified energy leadership and success coach at his company, Path to Coaching, Rob guides working parents down the path to personal and professional fulfillment so that they can enjoy their life with passion and energy. He's also a published author, public speaker, a father, a compliance executive, and so much more. Rob, thank you so much for being a guest on my show today. I'm so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So I would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit further and tell us what you're doing now and working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So my focus really is educating and guiding working parents down a path that provides them the rewards that they're pursuing, but I'm offering it to them now as opposed to later in life, so that they can enjoy those rewards now instead of hoping that eventually the rewards will still be there when they get there later in life. And it's really about finding the right path, and that process is more of a how instead of a when.
Yeah. And you know what? That's so important. And I talk to my clients about that as well, where it's like, we always have this future goal and we just keep saying like, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. But that underlying cause of like, how can we do that now and experience those same feelings now without necessarily achieving that ultimate goal? It's so important. So super great mission that you're helping parents with us.
Thank you.
So when were you first introduced to the concepts of energy leadership coaching?
That's a great question, and it's actually really poignant for me, and it happened in two stages. So first I heard about coaching, and then I heard about energy leadership. And when I had first heard about coaching, it was several years ago, and it was really described to me as a radical transformational process. But it was always attached to stories of people upending their lives and basically starting over again. And as somebody who had invested 20 years of hard work into my identity and my station in life and my career, it didn't appeal to me because I wasn't about to sacrifice my entire life simply because I wasn't happy with some part of it, or because life was going a little slower than I wanted. So I didn't really give coaching any consideration. And then I did an immersive study into kind of assumptions and limiting beliefs in my own life. And I realized that I ended up coaching myself and being coached through the process. And I realized that it was very different than what I had originally heard in the description. So I revisited the concept of coaching, and I found that the theory and the practice of energy leadership, and that resonated very loudly with me in terms of my perceptions and my values. And I had the revelation during my studies at IPEC that when I realized that all of the problems I was struggling with had nothing to do with me as a person, and that they were all about my energy level and how I was showing up for myself and in the world. And I was literally learning all of these aspects of energetic perception and their influencers, and even the foundation principles on my own through a school of very hard knocks. And so when I was in IPAC and I really heard the energetic perception and energy leadership presented to me as kind of a self-contained theory, and it was all laid out in front of me, it was amazing. And I realized that I was living it firsthand, and I was living it firsthand almost unnecessarily. And it was as if I took like a cube of granite and tried to make it into a wheel by myself. And when I was finished, someone handed me a beautiful bicycle wheel made of like space age materials. And they were like, hey, this has already existed. Would you like this? And it was like, wow, I could have used that a while ago. And so that's a little bit of the process of how I found out about coaching and got into it, and then really learned about energetic perception and energy leadership.
Yeah. And so, what's so funny is I had a similar path. Once I started at IPAC and started to embrace the foundation principles and the energy leadership model, I had that same realization that's like, holy crap, like it's not anything that I'm dealing with right now. It's 100% my mindset that is holding me back and causing all of this conflict that I'm seeing in my life. And I think one of the foundation principles that really speaks to that and speaks to the fact that you don't need to start over is before we can change or move forward, we first must just embrace who we are. So just understanding who we are and what's our energy so that we can then start to shift it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I heard about the energy levels, there was a lot of recognition in it where I could tell where I was operating from. And then when I read and really understood what some of the consequences are of operating at a particular energy level, I could really identify that in my own life. And so it was almost validation for what I was struggling with. But at the same time, it was also hopeful because it was like, well, wait a second, this is all something I can influence by choice. And so if I don't like the results of this energy level, I can move it. And then really the study was focused on how to do that, learning how to shift my energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I know you did a lot of self coaching, but I know you've also worked with energy leadership coaches. How has partnering with an energy leadership coach helped teach you how to put some of this into practice?
It's been really profound. I've had some really major revelations with my energy leadership coaches. And in fact, this past weekend, I just coincidentally had two sessions. I was working with two coaches, and two separate topics came up, but there was an overarching theme. And in one of the sessions, I had a breakthrough in kind of identifying an underlying assumption or a thought that really drives a lot of my overachieving and overworking tendencies. And I could see the evidence in recent behavior that I was falling back into like a really unhealthy cycle, but I couldn't identify the tangible culprit. I was struggling with what's causing this, because I wanted to, kind of unroot that cause. And in the session with my coach, I found that there was a lot of inner pain that was resurfacing. And my response to inner pain is to basically stand on my own gas pedal and overachieve and overwork. And it was like, oh, I get it. But that was getting coupled with some really just yucky level one energy where I was just resisting all calls to action. So it was as if I was standing on my own gas pedal, really needing to make progress. But not only was the handbrake on, the bumper was up against a pole, like a concrete pole, so there was no moving forward. And I think in kind of describing it, I said it felt like a donkey that just like drops its hindquarters into the dirt, and it's just like, nope, not moving. And I could see where that was happening in other parts of my life. And when I started to pick it apart with my coach, I could see kind of environmental factors and physical factors that were contributing to me staying stuck. And that was eye-opening because not only could I identify this root cause, which was this pain, but then kind of these coping mechanisms that would normally be occurring or at least kind of functioning as a counterbalance weren't because of physical and environmental factors. And so it was huge to work through that and to really see, okay, this again, it's all within my control. I don't like what's currently happening. I can step back and kind of see some causes. I can see a root contributor, and I can say, okay, well, what are some things that I can do to manage this, and what's working and what's not working? And so it was extremely helpful. And that's just kind of one example of some of the revelations that I've had in working with coaches.
Yeah. So you just brought up two things that I want to hit on quickly. So you mentioned assumptions, and that is one of the four main energy blocks that so many of us have that are holding us back from achieving our success. So I haven't covered those in any of my initial episodes yet. So I just want to touch on them quickly.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is a limiting belief, which is really just this profound belief that's out there that makes us not even want to try something. The second is an interpretation. So thinking we failed because of something else, or just it's how you interpret the situation. The third one that you just touched on is an assumption. So that's history repeating itself. So because you struggled before, you think you're going to struggle again. Or because you failed before, you think you're going to fail again. And the last one is a gremlin. And that's really that voice inside of our head that just tells us that we're not good enough. So just wanted to quickly cover what those were for my listeners, because that was a new concept that you brought up. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing that you brought up was the physical environmental influencers, which I actually just talked about on my last episode where I introduced the Schmepsies. So can you talk a little bit about how those influencers really were pulling on your energy and if they had an impact on any of the other influencers?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start first with environmental. And so I jokingly say that I'm either solar powered or I'm like formerly an iguana in a prior life. So I get all of my energy from the sun and being outside and really putting myself in nature. And I actually relocated across the country to put myself in a better environment where I knew I was going to thrive. And so what happens is, even if I do that, I need to take advantage of it and use it properly. And what I found was I wasn't using my environment properly. And an example is there's constantly this feeling where I think, or this thought or this drive that says, hey, why don't you go outside and work outside today? Take your laptop outside, sit at the picnic table and work. And then I think, no, I've got too much going on. And that right there is kind of a tell. That an internal drive is this kind of early warning system saying, hey, we need to recharge, please go outside. But then there's this foot on the gas pedal that gets foresighted on something that says, I don't have time for that. And so I wasn't properly balancing that. And then what happened was I finally had some time that I could justify going outdoors. And then it led to a ridiculous escapade where I said, okay, I get to go outside. I'm going to recharge my battery. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go on this ridiculously hard hike that I've never been on before. I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to feel great. And by trying to force this environmental input, I actually ended up injuring myself, getting more fatigued, getting lost, falling, cracking my face open. I did all these wonderful things that were counterproductive to recharging myself because I was forcing this kind of input of the environment. It would be as if, knowing I'm solar powered, I say, well, I didn't have time to get out every day to get incremental sun exposure. So instead, I'm going to place myself inside a microwave or a tanning bed for 4 hours. It was like I totally overdid it and did more damage than good. And that's a case where I haven't been properly using my environment. And when I did use it, I overdid it and did more damage. And I think an average person, or it's common for people to do this with vacations, right? Where they spend all this time working and then they plan a vacation. And instead of using the vacation to recharge, they use it to jam in all of these activities and experiences that they don't get to do during their quote unquote normal life. And they end up being more tired from vacation than when they went on vacation. And so I do it with my environment. So that's kind of one example.
Yeah. It's funny that resonates with me so much because I feel like I used to come home from vacation and be like, I need a vacation from my vacation.
Yeah, totally.
I'm also very jealous of the fact that you moved across the country, as it's about 20 degrees today in Philadelphia as we're recording this. And I'm sitting with a blanket over my lap and 2 sweatshirts. So I'm very jealous of the fact that you can just take your computer outside and go work at a picnic table if you choose to.
Yeah. Today's a little chilly for me. It's in the high 50s right now, but yesterday it was 75 and sunny and gorgeous. So yeah, I'm not sorry about it at all.
Yeah, you know what? Don't be. Take it and run with it.
Yeah.
So, as you know, there are a lot of different concepts that are at the root of the model of energy leadership coaching. So, we have the areas of influence, we have the core disciplines, we have the energetic self perception chart, all very interesting, all interconnected. but I'm curious which one has helped you or resonated with you the most.
Um, there's a couple, and I think right now the one that sticks the most with me because of my own life circumstances, it's the idea that doing is work and being is effortless. And the idea of when I'm forcing something, it doesn't work. And I think that hike was a good example. Like I went outside and tried to force a positive effect from my environment and I was doing it. It was a lot of effort and I got nothing out of it. And in fact, it was more detracting than it was contributing. And there are other times where I had an opportunity to just play hooky one day and I was able to just be like, you know what, I'm going to call in with a little minor cough, like I'm sick. And I went and found a place to go kayaking. And I love kayaking and I had no expectations. All I did was simply want to get outside and again, just bask in the sun a little bit, but on the water. No plan, no objective, wasn't defeating the lake. There was nothing to quote unquote do. It was just to be in the moment. I got done that kayaking, that morning kayak, and I literally had the largest wave of creativity and productivity that carried on for the next 3 to 4 weeks in my life. I was so productive. I had major breakthroughs, and it was because I just let myself be in the moment and I just kind of let everything occur. I didn't try to force it. I didn't try to control it. I just showed up. And so that concept right now is doing a lot for me. The idea of just be there. Don't attempt to do anything. Now, that doesn't mean be idle. That means don't go in with an agenda forcing something.
Mm-hmm.
Just show up and respond. And I think that carries into my relationships as well. I've reinvented my own fatherhood. And a lot of it was in order to be successful as a father for my son, not how I measure myself, but how my son measures success from a father has really been about being there and not doing dad stuff, but being there and being a dad. And those are two radically different things. Even though it sounds kind of like this soft distinction, it's really not when you look at the experience. And so that from just if I were to pin a foundation principle, that to me has really made all the difference. And it's where I find success. So when I find myself trying to use my ever trusty hammer as a screwdriver and all the other things it shouldn't be, I stop and say, Rob, you're doing, try to just be. And then a lot more stuff unlocks for me. And I find more success that way.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting is you said that, doing versus being, that they sound similar, but if you actually were to tie that to the energetic model of the 7 levels of energy, doing and forcing something is very level 2, where being is very level 6, 7.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can release from any expectations and shift from that level 2 energy of conflict into that level 6 of being in connection, it totally makes sense that you then had this wave of creativity and production, because that's what comes with the anabolic energy that lives at those higher levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that a lot with myself. And I am somebody who historically has found a lot of success at level 2. And it's success that's, done through a ton of pollution, a ton of bruises and battle scars and fatigue. But that's not an efficient way to get success. What I find for myself is operating at the 5 and 6 level, particularly 6 when I can get there, is where stuff just flows. And that is my flow state. And that's where things are easy. And so that's my reminder. It's my cue. Hey, just be there. And then it comes together.
Yeah, I love it. So what is one piece of advice for anyone that wants to live greater?
Oh, that's one piece of advice. I will say there are building blocks, right? And for me and for the clients that I work with, what I find to be effective is the building block of mindfulness and how to create a level of awareness, because you need to learn how to listen in order to understand where you are, because once you know where you are, you then know where you need to go and what needs to get done to get there. And one of the tools that I have found a lot of success with is what I'll call it a 4-part check-in. And I use a version of this in the first book that I contributed to. And it's one of the tools that I use for helping people kind of distinguish between a should and a want. But the tool that it's based on, like the core that it's based on, is really a 4-part check-in. That if I had to summarize it, it's the concept of ask, listen, and then determine the need and thank and express gratitude. And it deals with your mind, your emotions, your body, and your spirit. And so it's taking a moment throughout the day and just kind of stopping and asking your mind, what's going on? What are you focused on right now? And listening to what's going on in your head. What is it that's at the forefront of your brain? What is really taking bandwidth? Is it worry? Is it planning? Is it excitement? What is it? And then asking again, like, hey, mind, what do you need today? And it's, I need to get this to-do list done, or I need to get that thing written, or I need to express creativity, whatever it is. And then just kind of thanking it. And what I find is when you ask what's going on in your mind and ask what it needs, by extension of that, it turns down the volume of it. And then the same thing with the emotions, asking my heart, like, hey, what's going on? What are you feeling today? And it's like, well, I'm sad. Wow. Okay. What's going on? And listening to that, listening to where that emotion's coming from, and then asking, okay, what do you need today? And it's like, you know what? I need to talk to somebody. I need to call a friend, or I need to send a text. I just need contact. Okay. And then again, thanking my heart and my emotions, like thank you for being there and thank you for letting me know. And again, it turns down that emotional dial a little bit. And then I get into my body and say, hey, what's going on? It's like, dude, your back hurts. Your whole stomach system is off. That weekend was terrible. Like, what do you need? I need clean food. I need, or maybe I need rest. Maybe it's, you know what, you really want to work out today, but your back is killing you. You need to just kind of sit in child's pose for like 10 minutes. And going through that process and listening to my body. And then the final piece is you get to my spirit. And when I get to my spirit, all the volume on like my mind, my heart, and my body are quieter. So I can listen to what my spirit needs. And that's where real creativity comes from. That's where real purpose comes from. And again, ask my spirit, like, what's going on? What do I need today? And that's where you need to get connected. You need to get outside, put your feet in the dirt, just get outside, get in the sun. And that's really that inner drive that I talked about earlier, that, hey, go work outside today. What happens is when I find that when my system is already at like red alert, it starts overwhelming all the other senses and the spirit saying, do this, because if you don't, we're going to be in trouble. That little check-in, that kind of 4-part check-in, that creates awareness. And when a person can stop and kind of assess those channels within, they're then able to understand where they are from an energetic perception. Then you start to build that taxonomy. You have the tool to say, oh, I'm in level 2, I'm in level 3. And then you can start to say, well, I don't want to be there. That's not helpful. I want to move to a different level. And now you're equipped to know how to move. But if you can't listen to where you are, it's really difficult. It's like having a compass that doesn't point north. Mm-hmm. Like it's like if the compass had no magnetic north, you'd have no idea where you are. But that mindfulness, that kind of practice builds a north. And then you can be like, here's what's going on. So it was a very long-winded explanation of what do I think is a valuable tool. But I think that to me helps build awareness for people. And then that awareness is the tool that then helps them assess where they are and where they need to go, where they need to be.
Yeah. And so first of all, spot on with the mindfulness piece, right? I think whatever your mindfulness practice is, whether it's meditation, going for a walk, breathing, it all, to your point, teaches you to listen to what your brain and emotions are doing. And when you think about the 10 core disciplines of energy leadership, awareness is the first step. Mm-hmm. Because once you're aware, that's when you can then start to accept things for what they are and then make the conscious choice to change it, and so on and so forth, to, trust the process, build connections, become fearless. But unless you're mindful of what's going on and unless you're aware of what's going on, you'll never be able to make that conscious choice to change.
Absolutely.
So I love your 4-step process. Definitely want to have you back in the future to talk more about that. more about releasing from expectations, the whole doing versus being concept. But for now, I just want to thank you so much for joining me on the Conshy Coaching Podcast. And I'm really looking forward to having you as a guest on future episodes.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. This is great. And I would love to come back and share more time with you.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
That was episode 4 of the Conshy Coaching Podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Rob Tull and his business Path to Coaching, I have linked his website in my speaker notes. If you would like to learn more about mindset and energy leadership coaching, please subscribe to my channel and join my weekly email list so that you never miss an episode or a blog post. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.